bottom slash we're the top of Hey Zayin and Aleph, but we're in the middle of something. So just recap for a second. Rav and Shmuel told us a distinction between two cases. One case is where you're selling a kur, which is 30 saw, and you say, I'm selling it to you for 30 zuz, selling you a measurement of 30 saw for $30. So then you sell the whole thing. You're showing that you want specifically a kur sold, and therefore, until you have that amount, 30 saw, then you haven't sold anything. But the second case, which is what we're going to talk about now, is where you said, B'shloshim saw b'sela ani mocher lach. When you're selling 30 saw b'sela ani mocher lach, what you're in essence saying is that I want each saw sold for a sela. So in that case, you can acquire one at a time. That was Rav and Shmuel. They said Rishon Kana. There you acquire every little measurement as it comes in. On that, we're going to ask now from Ribis. So we know Ribis interest is usually with loans, but sometimes the rabbis instituted things look like Ribis. So let's say you prepay for something that's going to be, you're getting a much better price if you pay early, early bird specials. So I'm not saying all early bird specials are a problem of Ribis, but we're going to talk about a case of an early bird special. So what happens? You hired somebody to work for you. The last two lines of Pei Vav Amud Beis. Tashma hasocher esapo lasos imol legorin hayom bedinner ulegorin yafa sela. So asur lehanos hemen. So what happened? It's harvest season, and you want to hire a guy for $1 a day for a month. So right now you pay him $30 for the next month. And the problem is that during the harvest season, the going rate is not $1 a day. It's really $4 a day. Instead of a dinner day, it's a sela a day. So you're paying him now $30 ahead of time. So that's like a loan in essence. And now because you prepaid him, he's going to return to you 4 sela a day of work, $4 a day of work. So let's say it's for 30 days. Instead of $30, he's giving you back really $120 worth of work. So that looks like Ribis. Such a thing when you prepay agar nata, when you prepay, ahead of time. So that looks like Ribis. So says the Gemara. So you can't get benefit from this guy because that looks like Ribis. You're getting way more back than you have than you paid him for. So says the Gemara. But what's the other case? Today's not the harvest season. You're paying him, for the next 100 days. Happens to be that 30 of those days will be the harvest season. You're starting to work today, and you're paying him a dinner a day, and it happens to be that in 2 months from now, in the middle of the 100-day rental, it will come the harvest season, and there it's going to be a sela of work for the harvest. That case is going to be mutter, because in that case, we don't see you paying him for the harvest season. He's starting to work today. You're not paying him now, and when the harvest season comes, he will work for you. So since you're paying him today, he's starting to work today. It happens to be that in the middle, you'll get a little better for your buck, because in 2 months from now, when he starts working in the harvest season, it's really going to cost a sela. But that's not the same as the first case where you're actually prepaying and waiting for the harvest season. Then he starts to work for you a much better price. Okay, so what's that have to do with us? Says the Gemara, if you understand Rav and Shmuel, there's a second statement that when you verbalize, Kor b'shloshim saw b'sela ani mocher lach, when they added, I'm selling you a measurement of 30 saw, for a sela, I'm selling it to you. What they meant was really, I want to sell you this for 30 sela, 1 sela per measurement. There we said a rishon kana. So say here also, Hachanami, kama mifsak pasak, ve'asr lehanos heimenu. So says the Gemara, maybe you say the same thing over here. Our case, in this Ribis case, say that according to Rav and Shmuel, at the end of the day, you're paying him today to work for you. So view every day, you're paying him for 100 days, and you're giving him, whatever it is, a dinner a day, $1 a day for 100 days. So that would mean that when it comes to harvest season, if you view everything like an individual, one for one sale, so that means at the time of the harvest season, you're paying him 1 and you're getting back 4. So that should also be considered a problem. The interesting thing is that we're really comparing ribis, which is one section of halacha, to monetary sales, and that's going to be really the Gemara's answer. The Gemara is like, just because I found by Rav and Shmuel when it comes to buying something, the way I phrased it, we're going to acquire each little increment at a time, but not necessarily should we view a sale that way also. Should we view ribis that way also? Yeah. So Hachanami Kamakam Mipsak Pasuk also Hemenu. Hemenu. So we say yeah. I don't know where here. Mahayom bedinner, yeah. Mahayom bedinner ulagurning up a sela mutter. Amai. Why should that second case where we said there's no ribis problem? Why should it be mutter? The ha'agar nutter li, who at the end of the day you're paying him, let's say, for 100 days $100, and if you're paying him for 100 days $100, so then you're really agreeing to pay now, a certain amount of money. However, when that time comes to work the field, so you're getting back way more than you're paying for. And according to Rav and Shmuel, who say Rishon Kana, you should view it, one for one, and then it comes to threshing floor season where you're harvesting, and it should be all of a sudden 1 for 4. If it's 1 for 4, then that is going to be ribis. Yeah, 1 second. Right, the same way by Rav and Shmuel, because he verbalized it, he's really saying, I'm selling you a sela, for every measurement you give me. So too here, he's promising him a dinner for every day he works. Every day of this work that he's hiring this worker for is considered its own day. And therefore, when it comes to the harvest season, so you're promising him $1 and you're getting back $4 of work. The same way by the measuring cup, you because you verbalize it in a certain way. So now you're selling, let's say 30 pounds of potatoes for a sela. What you mean to say is I'm selling you each pound for a sela. And therefore each potato that goes into the cup is going to be acquired. So to here, each day is considered a significant day. And therefore, when it comes to the harvest season, so each day you're really paying him $1, but you're getting back 4. So that's also similar to ribis. That's like the first case. You're paying ahead of time, or you're agreeing to pay, and getting back much more for your money. Amarava said, hold on. Tizbara, is this logical at all? Dilzule bischiros mi asir. It's like, I don't understand. You can never pay a worker cheaper? What does that mean? If the work objectively is going to cost you $1 million, but a worker needs money, right? He needs money. So you can never have a cheaper worker. Like, what does that mean? So in this case also, you're hiring a guy for $100 for 100 days of work. Even though part of that work, the part of harvesting is going to cost you, it really objectively on the market value might cost a $200 worth of work or $400 worth of work. But of course you can have cheaper workers. There's nothing wrong with that. So therefore, it's not really comparable. By a worker generally will agree to work for less, and whatever the worker agrees to get paid for. So then you guys both agree to that deal. So therefore, it's not going to be a ribis question. But Tizbra is beschiros mi asir. So that's Rava's rejection. He said, don't compare, workers to measurements. At the end of the day, a worker can get paid less money if he wants. Whatever he agrees to do, that was part of the deal. So the problem is, if that's so good that you can always hire a worker for less, how come our first case is a problem of ribis? What was the first case again? it's harvest season time coming up in a few months, and it's really costs $120 for 30 days of work, and you're paying him right now $30 ahead of time, fast cash. We view that as a loan. Right now, you give him $30, and in the future, now that he's, he wants the money now, and then he's going to wait to work for you. When he waits and then works for you, he's giving you work back. That's $120. So in that case, we view it as a loan. It's like you're lending him $30 and getting back $120. That is a problem of ribos. So what's the difference between that case and the second case where the guy's starting to work today? Today is not the harvest season. The harvest season is in a month or two from now. He's starting to work today. You're paying him today. And then in the middle, you are getting back for a period of time more than you are paying for. So it says the Gemara, Ma yishna reisha, u'ma yishna seifa. So he says, reisha, the beginning of the brisa, the lo ka'abed b'hadei mehashta mechzik yager noter. The beginning, he's not working today. He's starting to work in 2 months from now when we start harvesting. So that's like this concept called agar noter. You're getting paid for, this waiting time. You're paying him now, then he's waiting, and then he's paying you back. Right? The same way by a regular loan. You lend money, and then there's a time, and then you pay the guy back. So that the rabbi said, that looks very similar to a loan. However, seifa, the ka'aved b'hadei mehashta, lo maxi kiagar naturally. That, it doesn't look like a loan so much. You're paying him when he's starting to work today. In the middle, he is getting back more, but that doesn't look like this idea of agar natur, where you're really waiting, where you really you're getting more money because you decided to pay now and then wait for the work later. That's more of a Ribba's question. And now, Jared, we're at the 2 dots. So you jump right in. 87a. Hey, Zion and Aleph. Anyway, a lot of Mishnayos coming.
I gotta do the sheet right on the page.
Oh, you cheated already. Okay, cheating is fine. Yeah, I do too sometimes.
That kind of cheating.
Yeah, that kind of cheating is fine. Jules will tell us what kind of cheating is not fine for later. So
it's only cheating when you get caught.
That's right. Spoken like a good fireman. So the Gemara said, if you want to acquire flax, so what do? So flax is now attached to the ground, and you want to acquire the flax, a lot of flax, pounds and pounds and pounds of flax. So said the Mishnah, as long as you pull a little bit of flax, you've acquired a lot of flax. Says the Gemara, that's not how it works. Mishum de talish kolshu kana, because I pulled one little thing of flax, I've acquired the entire bundle of flax. What does that mean? Amar Rav Sheshes, no. Hachamayaskina de Amar le, kayafalach karka kolshu v'kani kol mashalaha. The owner said, go improve the land, go take some flax for yourself. And therefore what he did was a kinyan chazaka. He's really acquiring that part of the land. So when he pulls some of that flax, it's a kinyan chazaka on the land. If it's a kinyan chazaka on the land, so whatever's on this area of land, he has acquired. So since the owner told him, go acquire the land and whatever's on it, so therefore your act of a kol shehu will suffice for what we call a kinyan chazaka. And the chiddush is, the novelty is that even a little pulling of flax can acquire the rest of the flax that's attached to the ground, because really you're doing a acquisition on that area of the ground. And since that flax is still attached to the ground, so therefore you've acquired the flax that's on the ground. Okay. Hamocher yayin v'shemen l'chavero. So you are selling wine or oil to your friend. Now, v'hukra o shehuzla. So once again, we're back into this idea that you have a measuring cup. The Gemara is going to speak it out, but we know already you're having a measuring cup from someone else. In Israel, they have all these things called gemachs. You have a gemach, it's like a charity place. You can get whatever you need. So you went to the measuring cup gemach. Yeah, you went to the place where they give you, where there's a big charity there that will give out for free measuring cups so sellers can measure and buyers can be happy with their measurements. So you go and you get this measuring cup from a third party. And now what happens? In the middle of you measuring out sugar, salt, oil, wine, let's say oil and wine, the Mishnah says, so the price goes up or goes down. So now, who does the product belong to? Says the Gemara, it says the Mishnah, it depends. Im ad shalonis smales hamida, if until the measuring cup has not been filled, so then it's lemocher. The price, the increase or the decrease, the mocher, it goes, meaning it's the sellers. So since until the cup has been filled, it's still his. So therefore, he can, he could sell it now the way he wants because it's still his. It's his
Right.
produce. Mishin Ismali Samida, if once that measuring cup has been full, now it belongs to the buyer. That was the deal, that you can use the cup until it's been filled to the top. Once it's filled to the top, it now belongs to the buyer. If right then and there, then the price goes up. So it's already the buyer's. So the buyer doesn't have to pay more money now to the seller because it already belongs to him. Now, if im haya sirsur beinehim, here you have a sirsur is a middleman. Like you have a real estate agent, a negotiator. That's what it is. Let's say negotiator.
Wholesaler.
A middleman. Okay. It's a negotiator. It's a guy in the middle. It's a real estate agent. It's a salesman. So now we're gonna have a few cryptic lines in the mission. The Gemara is gonna go through. Im haya sirsur beinehim. If you have this middleman agent in the middle, meaning he's negotiating between the seller and the buyer. Nish.
The middleman actually buys the.
Oh, we're gonna see. So now what happens? Yeah. So nishbra chavis, you're filling it up into a big barrel. So nishbra chavis. So it's nishbra l'sirsur. It's a loss for the middleman. Now, like Steve pointed out, the case is actually not where he's negotiating for the buyer to the seller, for the seller to the buyer, trying to cut a good deal. He himself is one who acquires wine and oil and resells it. So he brought his own barrel over here. He went to the seller, filled up the barrel broke. The barrel broke. So who suffers the loss? The middle guy, because he's using his own vessel to acquire. And if it's acquired in his vessel, then it belongs to him.
That sound like the middleman on the pager deal got a loss.
They joked around for a long time. Yeah. That's true. So yeah. So the Rashbam says, like, what's the novelty over here? If the guy brings his own barrel in to buy from the seller and resell it, so of course, if that barrel breaks, of course he suffers the loss. Says the Rashbam, maybe you would have thought that he's really a messenger of the buyer, because he's going to then resell it to the buyer. The buyer knows that from this guy you get a much better deal. So the Rashbam says, no, we don't view him as the messenger. Rather, he's his own. He works for himself, self-employed, and therefore, if that barrel breaks, so unfortunately, he suffers a loss too. So, so now, Hirkina umitzas harehu shel mocher. They add in some words over here. Hirkina umitzas harehu shel mocher, v'chayev lahatif lo shalosh tipin. So, you finished pouring from your measuring cup from your, I guess, either from your measuring cup to the buyer. So the buyer, that's, I guess, the case, the buyer has his cup, and you're pouring from the measuring cup to the buyer. There's always those drops on the bottom, right? So it says here, kiva, you have to tilt your cup on its side, and make sure that 3 tipin, those 3 little drops come out. Those little drops, they still belong to the buyer. Whenever you pour something out, there's always that, the residue that's remained. Right. So that has to go to the buyer. But after that, here kino mitzvahs harehu shel mocher, just the stuff that goes collected on the bottom, that the seller can keep. Those, especially with oil, the bottom oil of the barrel. So you've poured out a few drops for the buyer. The rest of that stuff, the rest of the residue belongs to the seller. Okay. V'chenvani, what if you're a storekeeper? So, and the Gemara is going to go through this at length. V'chenvani eno chayev lahatif shalosh tipin. A storekeeper does not need to pour out 3 drops to every one of his buyers, because Rashbam says he's tarid hu b'mechiraso. He's very busy. He's got 100 people coming in. It's going to go, each person is going to sit there giving 3 drops, so that he's not have to do that. And you can't come claim, the storekeeper didn't give me those 3 drops. Nope. So fine. And Rabbi Huda says, also a cryptic statement we'll go through in the Gemara. Rabbi Huda Omer, Erev Shabbos im chasheka pater. So Erev Shabbos, when it gets close to nighttime, he's patur. The Gemara is going to say, is he talking about a storekeeper, right? And he says, really, a storekeeper has to give the drops, but not Erev Shabbos. So really, he's stringent. Or he's talking about not a storekeeper, rather a regular guy. And therefore, even though the beginning of the Mishnah said you always have to give 3 drops, he's coming and being lenient and saying except for Erev Shabbos. So the Gemara is going to say, is Rabbi Yehuda going on the line directly before him, or the line 2 lines before him? Okay. So says the Gemara, what we spoke out is this measuring cup. Who does it belong to? Hamida Dimat. So let's go through it. Ilim Hamida de Lokeach. If we're talking about the measuring cup of the buyer, so then Achlo Nismalis Hamida. So then Achlo Nismalis Hamida Lamocher, Hamida de Lokeach. If you're talking about the vessel belongs to the buyer, so then even before it gets filled up, it's the buyer's. The El Hamida de Mocher. You want to tell me it's really the measuring cup of the seller? So then Mishin Nismalis Mida the Lokeach Hamida de Mocher. When it gets filled up all the way, it belongs to the seller. It doesn't go to the buyer. So what's the case where until it fills up, it's the seller's? Once it's filled up, it's the buyer's. Ella, it's the case of Rabbi La b'mida sirsur. You're using this middleman's measuring cup. The Hamid Katani Seifa b'imhaya sirsur beineim nishbra chavis nishbra l'sirsur mechlal reit derei shalab b'sirsur askinon. It sounds like from the latter part of the Mishnah, all of a sudden we mention a middleman, which would imply that the beginning of the Mishnah, where we had no mention of a middleman, we're not talking about a middleman. Says the Gemara, not so fast. Reisha mida below sirsur, seifa b'sirsur atzmo. Both cases are talking about a middleman. The difference is, in the beginning, he's not there. You went and you borrowed it from the measuring cup gemach, yeah. And in the seifa, the end of the Mishnah, he's there himself. So when he's there himself, that's where when he uses his barrel and the barrel breaks, it's his loss. But the first case in the Mishnah, like we had already earlier, is using a third party's measuring cup. And that's why the deal was until it gets filled up, the produce belongs to the seller. Once you filled it up, so now it belongs to the buyer. Here, kino umitzis harehu shalmocher. Now, I don't know, I didn't count. Oh no, no, never mind. Okay, so let's see. So here, kino umitzis harehu shalmocher. So that bottom residue really belongs to the mocher, the last part of the bottom of the barrel of oil or wine. So kisolik Rabbi Lazar, when Rabbi Lazar came up from from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. Usually when it's kisolik, it's going to Eretz Yisrael, right? Usually also means
going to it's going to here, going to Eretz Yisrael.
Correct, because the Gemara says Eretz Yisrael is the Gevoa Mikol Aratzos. Eretz Yisrael, the Chazal say, the Gemara says, is the highest of all the countries. So we're always going up to Eretz Yisrael. So kisolik means to go up, like salchadaitach means it goes up in your thoughts. So kisolik, when Rabbi Lazar went up, eshkechei le'zeiri, he stumbled upon, he met up with Zeiri, another big Rav. Amarle, mikantana, the asne Rav, mikantana the asne Rav midos. So he says, is there anybody in Eretz Yisrael that taught Mishnayos and Brysos? Because our Mishnah is dealing with measurements. So anybody in Eretz Yisrael who knows measurements well. So Achve Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Dimi. So he pointed him towards Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Dimi. He's someone who knows these things. Amarle Mika Kashalach. He said, what's so difficult? What's the problem? The Tanan here, Kino Mitzvah Hareyu Shal Mocher. He said, I don't understand. It says in our Mishnah, when you tilt the bottom of the barrel, that all the residue, that still belongs to the buyer. Turning the page, the Hatnan, here Kino Mitzvah Harezu Shal Truma. What happens if you have Truma? You have oil or wine, and Truma you have to give to the Kohen. So now you poured out that whole bottle into the Kohen's cup, and you gave him a nice bottle of Truma. And now the bottom of your bottle has residue. Who does that belong to? So says the Mishnah in Truma, it's Truma. So how come by Truma the residue belongs to the Kohen, and by a buyer and a seller, the residue belongs to the seller? and not to the buyer.
Because hektish wins.
Because hektish wins. That's the rule. Okay, let's see if the Gemara says because hektish wins. Let's see. So Amar Le, it's Marla. We taught about this Mishnah the following statement: Amar Rabbi Abo Mishum Yeush Bailim Naguba. We know there's a concept called Yeush. A lot of Bava Batra is based off it. So I guess I'll have to wait another 6.5 years to get there together. But Yeush Naguba, that when a person is miyayish, when he gives up hope, literally he gives up hope. So then he basically removes himself from the object, right? So the same way you would imagine if you want to make your property ownerless, it's called making it hefker, like we do Erev Pesach. So what are you in essence doing? You right now own that coffee mug. Now, if you had halacha classes, you would see jewels all in that coffee mug. Right now, we can't see that, but that's yours. Once you make it hefker or your miyah, if it gets lost, God forbid, and Jules gives up on it, he's miyayish. So then when Jared finds it, so then he's gonna say, "Oh, I got a new coffee mug, and it belongs to you because you've removed your ownership from that." So too by a buyer and a seller, when the seller pours out the bottle to the buyer, so the buyer is miyayish on that last little part. He gives up on it, and therefore it remains the seller, right? In general, buyers don't care about that last part. I had a Rebbe always used to say, the concept of yesh only belongs in monetary matters. It doesn't belong in daily life. So it belongs in Choshen and Mishpat, not in Orach Chaim. So there's no giving up in everyday life, only in monetary matters. Yeah. So that's why by Truma, we don't say that by Truma. Truma, it rightfully belongs to the Kohen. You owe it to the Kohen. It's not a matter of yesh or not yesh. So that's why there, it still belongs to him. And you guys have to scoop it out or maybe give him the bottle or work it out with the Kohen. Okay, but now we said a chenvani, a storekeeper, does not need to drip out 3 drops to every one of his customers because he's very busy. Rabbi Yehuda said, Erev Shabbos, you're exempt. So what was Rabbi Yehuda talking about? Ibailahu, Rabbi Yehuda, areshakai, ulakula, odilma, asefakai, ulachumra. Is Rabbi Yehuda going on the first part of the Mishnah that said that every person has to give out those 3 drops to the buyer? And Rabbi Yehuda is coming and saying a leniency, not Erev Shabbos. Or he's saying that he's actually very stringent. That a storekeeper, he's saying, always has to give out 3 drops, except Erev Shabbos. So it says the Gemara, Tashma, the Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Erev Shabbos im chashecha, chenvani pater mipnei shechenvani tarut. So we have explicit brisa saying that Erev Shabbos, a storekeeper, is exempt because a storekeeper is very tired, very busy, very occupied. So you see that Rabbi Yehuda is talking about a storekeeper. So by a regular person, he agrees the seller owes the buyer 3 drops. By a storekeeper, he argues and says that they also have to give 3 drops. They're not busy enough that they can exempt themselves with a few drops for every customer. However, Erev Shabbos, they are very busy. They got to get home and prepare, and therefore there's special exemptions by Erev Shabbos.
You get 3 jobs left over in
3 jobs or 3 drops?
3 drops, yeah.
If you have 3 jobs, you're very busy Erev Shabbos.
Yeah, well, you get 3 jobs, yeah. They're all paid by paying.
Yeah, job, cleaning, and the kids. Okay, that's right. Yeah.
3 drops left over in your bottle, and then you take it and you fill it back up, and the 3 drops are truma. Is it bottle in there or is it not?
3 drops in your bottle. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like does it become
Truma? The Mishnah, I believe, says it's only bottle if it's there's 100 corresponding to it.
okay?
The only problem is there's something called
win again on all that.
Hegesh wins again, except for you're in big trouble with Rosh Hashanah coming up because there's a halacha ein mevatlan isra lechatchila. Just because you know there's a mechanism of like meat and milk is 60, you're not allowed to go and do that. You can't take, pour a little milk in your cholent pot and then dump your whole cholent stand and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's 1 in 60."
Do it
So if you did it by accident, that's what the question would be. Not that you're in trouble. I'm saying one who did that would be in trouble. So we're not picking on you. I mean, we are picking on you, but not so intensely. So
It's just in your general direction.
yeah, in my general direction. But yeah, I think it's 1 in 100. So yeah, if that would happen, and that would, at first glance, it would follow the general rules of it. Sure, I don't see why a bottle would be different than anything else.
And you couldn't like be there on truma, right? Like you could, but it would that object would still be truma, right?
All right, so that's a question that we have to look up. Sometimes, once it's bottle, once it's nullified, it's nullified.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're in doubt or something, you can misafek,
Right.
something like that. Yeah.
Sorry, my brain just.
Yeah, that's okay. Brain going off is a great thing. It's about time, it's 7:44 in the morning, it's already late. So
We're all warmed up.
yeah, we're all warmed up now. That's right.
Here we go.
So okay, Hasholeach es beno. So I don't know. I found this next daf and a half or daf very humorous. Hasholeach es beno. Yeah, for some reason you decided to trust your little child with your business transactions. So that's the first interesting thing I found. Hasholeach es beno eitzel kanvani, because I was thinking of my son and getting humored. You send your son to the store, yeah, and you send him with a flask and some money, and you want to come back with some oil, some wine. Hopefully your flask should be filled with some produce. So now the kid gets to the store. Umadad lo be'isser. So the guy measured out an isser worth. An isser is a currency. So an isser is two, I believe it's 2 punyans. An isser is 2 punyans. Either way, so he measured.
Yeah, punyan is 2, he says.
A punyan is 2 issers. Okay, good, thank you. So the kid has a punyan with him, and he measures out the storekeeper an isser worth. So you have the kid has $1. He gives you half $1 worth of produce. Madlo the isser shemen. So now the nasan lo is the isser. So now the kid gave the storekeeper an isser. So he measured isser and he gave him the money. So now what happened? On the way home, shaver es atzlochis. So the kid broke the flask. V'avid es isser, and he lost that isser amount of right. The kid gave the storekeeper a punyan worth, $2 worth. The guy gave back $1. The kid lost the flask and the $1. He lost both. So the storekeeper took, let's say, both dollars from the kid, measured the amount, gave the kid back $1 and the flask. So now, who is exempt? Who is obligated? I didn't count how many different explanations for this Mishnah are. There are at least 4 or 5, maybe 6, or maybe 7. I don't know exactly. We're going to go through a lot of different understandings of what exactly is the case. But the Abadas is so Chenvani Chayiv. The storekeeper is chayiv to pay for. Right now, we're assuming for the flask and the oil and the isser and the $1. So the chenvani is fully responsible. Thank you. Rabbi Yehuda poter. Rabbi Yehuda says no, he's exempt. Why? She'almanas kein sholcho, because that was the father sent the kid. Okay. We're gonna see. Rabbi Yehuda says he's exempt because he was sent for that reason. We'll see what that means. Umodim chacham Rabbi Yehuda, but the chacham will agree to Rabbi Yehuda to one case of exemption. Bizman she'atzloch is biad atinok, umadar chenvani letocha shechenvani pater. If the kid held onto the flask while the storekeeper was measuring it, so he measured it into the child's flask, so then if the child comes back and that breaks, so then he will be exempt also.
Reminds me of the story of the mother who sends her son to the store to get matches. And she says to him, make sure the matches are all good. So he comes back and she opens the matches and they're all burnt out.
They're all good.
Just like, he says, make sure they're all good. I tested them all.
Very good. They're all good.
It's all good.
So it's a little bit vague. So where do the Rabban and Rabbi Yehuda argue? So there are 3 things that are lost. The flask is broken, the oil is gone, and the isser, the $1, is also gone. Rabbi Yehuda says the storekeeper is obligated to pay back something, and Rabbi Yehuda says he's exempt from something. So what are you exempt for, and what are you obligated to pay for? I understand when it comes to the $1 and the oil, that the Gemara understands their argument. Dirabanan savri leoduye shadri, Rabbi Yehuda savri le'shaduri le'shadri. There seems to be an argument exactly what was the intention of the father when he sent his son. So the Rabbanan said that he sent him leoduye shadri. He sent him not to purchase oil, just to see how much it cost. He wanted to know how much would a flask worth cost. And the storekeeper takes the flask, fills it up, takes the money, gives back $1. So that makes sense. That according to the Rabbanon, the storekeeper is going to be obligated. Rabbi Yehuda Savar l'shiduri le'shaja. I sent you to go fill it up, to go acquire for me, that much. So why is the storekeeper your fault? You sent the kid. It's your responsibility. So I'm not at fault for just doing what I'm supposed to do. But what's the actual flask? Ela shever tzluchis. The actual flask that broke, says the Gemara, it's aveda midasi. It's aveda midas. Aveda midas means it's like you lost it willingly, meaning you're giving something expensive, an expensive flask, to a child. So that's in essence taking the flask and breaking it. Meaning, the same way you took a flask and you smashed it, you're responsible because you're on purpose losing it. Entrusting this kid with this flask, that's also going to be like a Veda Midas. The Rashbam says he doesn't know how to guard this flask. He's so therefore it's like hefkerhu. It's as if he made it ownerless. So if that's true, what are you blaming the storekeeper for? Yeah. So that's why the Gemara says, why in the world should the Rabbanon say that the store owner is going to be obligated to pay for this flask? Okay, so that's a problem because the Mishnah sounds like you're paying for everything, flask, oil, and that $1 that was lost. But I don't understand, entrusting a child with a flask is like making it ownerless. And yet it seems like that they argue about the flask. Also about the flask. Rav Oshia, Hacha, the Baal Habayis, Mocher Tzlochios Haskinon. We're talking about somebody, the father, he sells a lot of flasks. Ukigon shenat lechenvani, almanas levakra, ukidishmul. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, the father himself is a salesman. He sells a lot of flasks, and he wanted to see if the storekeeper was going to buy the flasks from him, right? Wholesale, retail. So here, how are you going to do it? So he's busy. He's busy making big deals. So he sends his son to go to the storekeeper to see if the storekeeper wants to buy this flask or not. And the storekeeper goes, looks at it, and gives it back to the kid. So, and that's the case where if it broke, the Rabbanan are going to say that the storekeeper is obligated to pay. Why? Ukidish Shmuel. This goes like the opinion of Shmuel. Damar Shmuel. Hanotel kli mina uman. You take a vessel from a craftsman. So you go, you want to look at a new car, you want to look at a new table, a new cell phone, or you walk into T-Mobile, you check out the phone just to see how it works, Almanas levakro, to go and look at it, to inspect it. V'nen as biyado. While you're inspecting it, it breaks. Who's chayiv? You're chayiv. The person who's inspecting it is chayiv. Why? Because as soon as you took it into your hands, so we assume that really you're going to buy it. Now the Gemara is going to say at the end of next stop, it's a case where I believe there's a set price for this object. Everyone knows how much it costs. Now you take it to inspect it. We're assuming you're going to buy it, and therefore you take responsibility for it as long as you own it. And therefore, if it's lost, so in this case, he gives back the flask to the child. So it's like since someone, like Shmuel says, looks at a vessel to buy it, is going to be chayiv, because once he's looking and inspecting it, we assume he's going to buy it. And seems to be probably a set price for this already. So he already now takes responsibility for it. Since he took responsibility for it, when he gives it now back to the kid and it breaks, he is going to be responsible. He's only going to be exempt really if it ever gets back to the original owner and then it breaks. Then, okay, that's not his anymore. But once he took it to inspect it, so now he's already responsible for it. Yeah, the Rashbam points out we're talking about a case, as the Gemara is going to say, where there's a set price for this object. Since there's a set price for this object and you take something to inspect it, we already assume that you're going to buy it. Whereas why are you picking it up? And nowadays we do this all the time, but nowadays when you walk into T-Mobile, there's an assumption that you can go look at all the phones. I remember next to the Mir, they had a very big farm store there. It's a lot of Jewish books, but they had a rule: only 5 minutes of reading per book. right? Everyone came, during the lunch break just to read. They were looking to acquire the book, right? But in this case, when you're really looking at these vessels, there's an assumption if you're picking it up to really inspect it, you're going to buy it. I guess really, if you want to do it a different way, you can have the guy show it to you. So, yeah, okay. So that's why you're going to be chayiv in this case. And then as biado chayiv. So we're saying, one second, are you telling me that Shmuel is getting involved in a machlokas Tanaim? Shmuel was an Amora. He came later. Lema de Shmuel Tanai. This Mishnah, the Rabban and Rabbi Huda, seems to be a machlokas with the opinion of Shmuel. But we would rather Shmuel go like all the Tanaim, not So Lema de Shmuel Tanai. So we reject that. We don't like that. That really we're making now this opinion of Shmuel a machlokas in our Mishnah. We'd rather change the machlokas in our Mishnah and not have it be not have Shmuel be taking one side of the argument. Ela Rabba Rav Yosef, Rabba and Rav Yosef the Army Travayu, Hacha bechenvani mocher tzloches askinan. Okay, we're talking about a storekeeper who sells flasks. The Oz the Rabbi Huda Latame and Rabbi Huda who exempts the storekeeper. He goes like his opinion. What were their opinion by the oil and the money? Why the father send the kid? Did he send him for the guy to check it out? Or did he send it so that he would buy oil? So now, according to the Rabbanan, you send a kid to go just to see if to see how much, not to see if the owner wants to buy this flask, but you don't want to buy the oil. So now the store owner should know that. And if he takes the flask and now gives it back to the kid, so then it's on the store owner. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you sold it to come home with oil in this flask. So therefore, if that flask breaks, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the storekeeper is exempt. He's just a salesman. So the question is really, is the storekeeper a salesman or is he a buyer? Is he looking to buy such a flask or is he really looking to sell his oil depending on how you view this storekeeper when a kid comes to him? If you view him as really he's just he's a buyer looking to acquire a flask, so then he filled up and gave back to the kid, so then he's at fault. But if he's just an oil salesman, so then just the oil is going to be he's going to be chayav for, but not the flask itself. So says the Gemara, if that's true, that really the Mishnah is talking about that when the Rabbanan say you're chayav, they're chayav for the flask, the oil, and the money. And Rabbi Yehuda said you're exempt from the flask, the oil, and the money. What's at the last part of the Mishnah? The Chachamim agreed to Rabbi Yehuda when the flask remains in the child's hand and the store owner goes and fills up the flask with oil. In that case, the Rabbanan are going to agree to Rabbi Yehuda that if the child comes home and the flask breaks, on his way, there everyone agrees the storekeeper is exempt. In the event that he never took the actual flask, but it remained in the child's hands, there everyone agrees that the storekeeper is going to be exempt. So the question is why? Why should it be exempt? Why should you be exempt? The Ha'amers, you just told me that according to the rabbis, you just sent the flask in the hands of the child for the store owner to inspect the flask to see if he wants to purchase it. If he now goes and pours oil into it, so why should he be exempt? Why should he be exempt? It sounds like he should really be responsible. You poured oil into the kid's flask. I guess that helped cause the breaking. The fact that now it's full with oil, maybe. So why are we exempting the store owner? Yeah, so maybe we'll continue. We'll continue from here.